Hello everyone and namaste. This is Dr. Srinidhi Chidambaram here, welcoming you to a Facebook Live session presented by Apollo Hospitals. Now, I do hope that you're all staying safe and healthy because today we are actually going to talk about the latest development regarding COVID-19, which is the Omicron variant, the BA.2.5, that is now driving COVID-19 infections in our country. You know that all viruses, including the one that causes COVID-19, they do change over time and various strains and variants can develop. They can be mutations. These changes can affect or may not affect the virus's properties, such as how easily it spreads, how virulent it is, or even might uh, uh, cause some amount of evasion of some vaccines that you might have taken earlier. There might be different treatments that are required, different kinds of symptoms, so many possibilities. But the Omicron variant of the coronavirus, which has been the one which is predominant across the globe now since the beginning of 2022, is also mutating continuously. And its subvariants like 4, 5 are prevalent in Europe and America. There's a new sublineage of Omicron, which is the BA.2.5, which has been detected in India and some other countries as well. There are also some other variants which have been found in India. But what we need to understand is this will keep happening. The COVID-19 pandemic is still, though we don't have those massive kinds of waves, but it is still happening around the world and in India too. So we need to keep abreast with the latest on this disease or on this infection. And we also need to know how much, these variants do keep happening and how much should we be concerned or should we be alarmed or should we just ignore it as something that the virus keeps doing. So we have a lot of questions today, and to answer them and to guide us on what we now need to be aware of regarding COVID-19, we have with us Dr. S Kanwar, who is one of the senior most pulmonologists in Apollo Hospitals with over 45 years of experience in handling critical care, acute and chronic respiratory diseases, a pioneer in sleep medicine in India, started in Asia's largest state-of-the-art sleep lab at the Indraprastha Apollo Hospitals, New Delhi, has done the largest number of sleep studies, many research papers, leading the lung transplant program at Indraprastha Apollo Hospitals, New Delhi. Dr. Kanwar has completed his MBBS from Amritsar, DNB from the National Academy of Medical Sciences, and also has received pulmonary and critical care training from Mayo Clinic and also sleep medicine training from the same Mayo Clinic, Rochester. Also developed, he has also received training in echocardiography at the University of Alabama and training in lung transplantation from the University Network Hospital, Toronto. He has over 33 years of teaching experience pertaining to respiratory, critical care and sleep medicine abroad as well as in India. Welcome, Dr. Kanwar, to this Facebook live session.
Thank you, Dr. Srinidhi.
Since we have spoken, we had a whole COVID care and COVID recovery series during the peak of the first. Now it's been a while since we have gotten back to COVID-19 again. Here we are today. We're looking forward to hearing all about what's new and what's happening with the virus as well.
Well, we have over the last 2.5 years convoluted, in fact, with COVID. Wave 1, Wave 2, Wave 2, the Delta and the Delta Plus was terrible. And the mortality rates were high, morbidity was very high, and there was a general panic all over the world, in fact, with Delta. And in India, whatever figures you have, we don't know. There were a lot of those which were not recorded, which were not even tested, and they lost their lives. Anyway, thereafter came Omicron. And Omicron, as you know, is a much milder variant, though very easily to spread. So as the pandemic has progressed over the last 2.5 years, the severity of the disease has come down globally. whatever variants we are talking about, we'll talk about those variants. But the spread has been so easy, and the multiplication of the virus has been so high. That's why the incubation rates days have been low. In the original wave, the average incubation period was 5.6 days. It varied from 4 to 11 days. In Delta times, it came down to something like 3 days. But in Omicron, it came down to about 1 day or so. And in the variants, the subvariants of Omicron, which we are dealing with, now we are dealing with 2.75. And then, but there are also BA.4.4, BA.5, which are, it's like an inverted tree. If you just imagine an inverted tree, these are the offshoots. BA.4 and BA.5 are the offshoots. Similarly, BA.2.75 is an offshoot. So they all have actually further gone down in their incubation period. Now we see clusters of patients in the same family coming up with symptoms at the same time. I mean, you have, it's not just one member falling sick and then 5 days later another one, or 3 days later another one. No, there are 4 or 5 members, 3, 4, 5 members. Now this has been happening since the Omicron times. So now with subvariation, it's probably gone further into it. And now when we compare with .4 and BA.5, the BA.2.75 has 8 more mutations. 8 more mutations, and the scientists have suggested that this is the reason it is even faster to spread. And probably that the fear is that it might be also causing more evasion to the immunity. Now, evasion could be due to previous infections, evasion to, immunity to previous infections, or immunity to, against the older disease or vaccination. So both of them put together, this has the ability to evade. And when they asked why the ability to evade, multiple changes in the spike protein. And also, one reason given was that it is spreading so fast that by the time the body's antibodies react to it, it has already gone somewhere. So there is a partial evasion, you can say, but somehow, as long as the symptoms are suppressed, it's just like a flu-like illness, we are not that worried.
But why do these viruses mutate? I mean, like, what is it with them? Like, how do they keep doing this?
That is the nature
of them. They keep constantly trying to evade everything and try to infect people. So how is the behavior of? I mean, why do these things happen? And what changes it?
This is the natural, progress in the life of a virus. They would mutate. You cannot stop the viruses from mutating. While we are talking, we are not actually, the virus is not at 2.75 or .4 or .5. No, it's much further. The virus may be thinking, oh my God, they're still talking about BA.2.75. Oh my, we have progressed much more. So by the time we realize what other mutations are happening, a lot of mutations would be happening. In fact, there are parallel mutations happening at the same time. But there'll be only a few of them which would emerge as winners. They compete. These mutations compete among themselves to hit the humans and to try to cause a disease. And the humans are, of course, through their antibody or through whatever immunity they have against the virus, or whatever drugs they take, or whatever precautions, masks and hand hygiene, staying away, all these things, they are trying to stay away from the virus. The virus is trying to take the entry into the body, and various mutations, they are trying to compete with each other to get entry into the body. Only a few of them would actually emerge as winners. You remember when Delta and Delta Plus became so popular, infamous around the world, especially there was a lot of fears in USA and in Europe also, and in India, of course, India Delta played havoc. But at the same time, there were a few other mutations, at least 2 of them, which was supposed to do much worse than Delta.
Yes, I remember.
In fact, the worry was not Delta at that time, but it was they did not surface too much. They were there, but got suppressed. It was Delta which took over everything. Now, for example, in USA, there is the fear that BA.5, by the way, currently BA.5 is holding about 65% of new infections. A month earlier, about 5 weeks earlier, it was just about 13%. So that has actually kind of overtaken all other mutations, whatever was supposed to be there, including 0.4. Now, their worry is that they shouldn't have a BA.2.75, which is predominantly in India. Again, it started from India. Just like Delta started from India, same way BA.2.75 started from India. Now, their worry is that that should not enter USA, but it is already there. In fact, it's in many countries, UK, New Zealand, Australia, and so Europe, Canada, US, and Asia is already involved. So that is the worry. Now, another thing, it should not be extrapolated that if one country is not facing a havoc or the disease is there like a flu, it will cause the similar symptoms in another continent or another country. It should not be presumed like that unless many countries have shown similar behavior, and that too in different geographical areas, because the immunity among that population could be a little different based on the previous infections that have been identified or not identified by your surveillance system, but it has been there. People have the exposure. And so the behavior in different communities, in different countries, different continents could be a little different. So your reaction could be different. That's why the US currently is in USA people are a bit worried about .275.
So talking about this variant, which is now the prominent, the prevalent one in India, what are there any particular symptoms that are different from the past?
Interesting, very interesting. In fact, let me take you back. Just imagine a scenario about 2 years ago, then 1 year ago. There was a time when people were not talking about nasal or oral loss of taste or smell initially in the first wave. Then came a phase, somewhere towards I think it's July or August or September, in later part of the Wuhan wave, when people started developing these symptoms. There were phases when people had headaches very commonly. Then there were phases when for 2-3 months, people were hardly complaining about headaches. There were phases when people had diarrhea, a little bit of nausea, vomiting. Then there were phases, a few months, nothing was there. So this is all the game of mutations. And the symptoms have been varying. In fact, we were talking at that time, even when this was not being talked about in the international literature, in our discussion, we thought, now the symptom complex is changing. If symptom complex is changing, probably something is happening to the virus envelope or the spike protein, something is happening there. So that would determine what kind of symptoms you may have. Now, currently, in Omicron, it is almost typical flu. A little bit of coryza, but running low. Oh, yes. In Wuhan wave or in Delta wave, did you see people with runny nose and nasal symptoms going on for weeks and weeks together? No, it was not there. Just a little bit of itchiness at the most. That's about lasting a day or two. But now, in this Omicron wave, runny nose is a very, very frequent. Probably the commonest symptom, besides a little itch in the throat, body aches, fever, usually under 101 Fahrenheit. So this is the character. And diarrhea, loose motions is there quite frequently in these cases, usually lasting about a day, hardly going over to the second day. So these are the usual complaints: a little bit of nasal congestion, sore throat, a little bit of cough, and fever going up to about 101. So these are the typical flu symptom. And in flu syndrome also, you can have diarrhea. So that's why it's all the more important to always test them and make sure you don't miss COVID cases.
And is it more, I mean, you already said that, we've seen families, clusters of them getting it. So it is obviously very contagious as well.
Yeah. Yeah, very contagious. That is why you see clusters. There is hardly any incubation period.
Now, extrapolating this whole scenario on how, as we look back during the first and second wave, the world shut down. And everybody was, there were lots more restrictions, there were lots more testing, lots more, people being at home and wearing masks. And now we find that in certain places, it's again come back that masks in public places are mandatory. But in many countries, people are not testing, people are not isolating. In the UK, for example, and they are not wearing masks either. So in this situation, what do you think what's going to be the trajectory? Because is the virus mild in itself is that a blessing, or should we be more careful?
It's a very interesting question again. Interesting because one would say, all right, we are having vaccines. Why are we having vaccines? If you believe in vaccines, then the idea is that you develop some immunity against the current virus. So if vaccine was supposed to prevent us from the kind of mutation that we were dealing with 2 years ago or a year ago when the vaccines came into the market a year and a half ago, or when they went into manufacturing almost a year and 7, 8, 10 months, then will that protect us? The virus has changed shape. It has mutated so much from that time onwards. And the replication has been so fast now with the current variants. So is the vaccine really actually working? So then the issue here is how bad is the disease? If the disease was bad, then of course we would be very vehemently talking about these things over and over again for preventive measures, this, that. But now if you accept that COVID is currently behaving like a flu, then if there are no long COVID symptoms happening currently with the current variants, long COVID, because long COVID was a real problem in both the first wave and the second wave. People continue to have some symptoms, not all of them, of course, quite a few of them, a good percentage of them for 3, 4, 5, 6 months, 8 months, a year. Weakness, tiredness, fatigue, a little bit of cough, a little bit of breathlessness, those things will continue. But currently, if the Omicron wave is not causing long COVID, and the symptoms do not last beyond a week or 2 weeks or maximum 3 weeks, then am I that worried? I may as well get some antibody, virus and develop the antibodies with the current status, like a vaccine produced just now. So what is harm in that? I think that was the logic. Why in the UK, the Europe, the USA, they all decided, okay, as long as it is not killing, as long as it's not hospitalizing the patients, and patients are not going on oxygen, it's not causing pneumonias, then let it be like a flu and let them have the antibodies developed through the latest variant. Now, that is my own philosophy about it, that we are monitoring, we are having a clinical surveillance is there, and our hospital beds are not full. Our hospital beds, currently 5 patients. If there was a time in Delta time, we had 470 patients admitted here, and we would spend the whole day doing rounds. But now it's whatever wave is there, and let me tell you, there are lots and lots of patients who are not surfacing, who are just doing rat tests at home, the antigen test, rapid antigen test at home, and they are not even getting reported. And there are lots of people who are not even testing that. So how many of them are actually doing RT-PCR? Very few. So, and even those who are doing, they are doing it just for the sake of knowing that they are positive. Let the family members know that, so that they need to be careful about others, especially very old people, very young people, children, or people with comorbidities. That is why they are getting tested. So that's why the numbers of really positive cases would in the whole country would show a few thousands. In Delhi, it would show 3, 4, 5, 6, 700. That's about all. It might be 10 times, 20 times more, actually, 30 times more probably. But that is a good sign that we are actually developing herd immunity now. So be it.
I think so. But what about this booster then? I mean, in the UK and the US, people, we have progressed as far as having the first booster, but then in some countries, people have gone beyond, at least for the older age groups, taking another booster. They do it in the spring and they do it in the autumn and everything. So, what do you think we should do? Because there have been some questions raised here also, whether the older population should take, because now most of them would have taken the first booster almost as early as about 7-8 months ago. So what is your take? Do you think that people should, of course, there's no directive on it, but is it wise then for the elderly or some groups to take another booster or another booster? How long do we have to keep doing this, or it's not?
It is, again, a fiercely debated point in some circles around the world. Whether boosters should be given anymore, and boosters, the companies would want the boosters to be given every 6 months, and whether that is justifiable or not. And the booster that you're getting, when was the booster dose prepared? A year back, the preparation started. So where are we now? Were they covering those strains which are coming in future? Very difficult question to answer, honestly. Whether a booster dose would really help people or not, especially if there is a herd immunity which has developed to the current variants. So what is an older generation booster going to do? In what way? And we are not entirely sure that these doses are entirely free of future side effects of some sort. So we are not really all that sure about that. But having said that, recently they have also shown, and the WHO and the CDC also shown that, for example, those who had booster, they had less disease with BA.4 and BA.5. If that is the case, then the same thing can be extrapolated, hopefully, to BA.2.75 also. So, the spike protein changes, new mutations happening there, how much that it actually affects the let's say, nullification of the booster or the vaccine. It is difficult to say because it is not just the spike protein only where the variation is taking place. There are other ways also. So that's why there is supposed to be some partial response. But if somebody tells me the vaccines protect by 90%, protects by 60%, 80%, I don't believe that at all. In fact, if that was the case, and if that protection was to hold good, then in reported death rate I think in USA was 90% among those who are vaccinated. So, I mean, if large population is already vaccinated, and somebody says that 95% response rate to the vaccine, then why 90% death rate among those who are vaccinated or double vaccinated? Rather double vaccinated. So it is difficult to say. So those figures, those numbers which have been given to us from the very beginning, they are not to be taken without a pinch of salt. But yes, in extreme age group, especially comorbid group, those who are the immune compromised in one way or the other, post-transplant cases, those who are on chemotherapy, on dialysis. These are the groups where you want to have the benefit, even if it is 10 to 20% or whatever. So you would like to give them the chance with a booster, whatever benefit it has. Yes, I agree with you that I wouldn't I would change my thought process in that case because I would like to give them booster. But in general, in young, healthy people, who have just been infected, who have only been infected a few times, one or two or three times with COVID. There are lots of people, even three times with COVID, we have seen. Two times, so many of them. How much of a booster would help them, it's difficult to say. But then there is also studies which says that booster gave better protection as compared to the infection that they had, because the way that the vaccine-induced immunity is covered. So probably yes, in extreme age groups, in comorbid cases that I mentioned, it still makes sense that boosters should be given.
So finally, I just wanted to ask, what should the individual do? Like, to have the rules changed, or it's still the same? Wear the mask, wear the sanitizer.
Oh yeah.
We've come a long way in that as well, because there was a time when we used to wash the vegetables and keep everything outside and sanitizers. But now I think those days have gone, where everybody's saturation used to be measured when they came into work, all sorts of things. So what are the basics now? I don't know how
those were the days when we were trying to prevent every sort of infection of COVID. But at the same time, we were also, a little unsure about how the COVID would behave, and the death rate was significant, quite significant. That's not the case anymore. And my answer remains the same. I mean, even if you get a little bit of infection, and it gives you some immunity without causing much disease, and gives you new immunity. I wouldn't go for. In fact, I'm not using mask anymore for the last more than 2 months. It's fine. I'm okay with that. But in the hospital, despite working in the hospital, despite seeing patients who are sitting across me and talking to me, and some of them do turn out to be COVID. But I'm okay with that, because I know at the most I'll get a little flu-like picture, and that will give me immunity. So it is like getting the latest vaccination, all prepared given to you by some patient. That's okay. And nobody is doing those cleaning the vegetables, sanitizing, putting outside the door, and then somebody who brings it goes away, and then use the gloves, and then straight away go to the under the wash. And those days are gone, and it's not required anymore. In fact, masks, unless you are in a congregation where I think if you're in a flight, you should still be using mask. I still am in favor of that, even though the air circulation is there, but I'm still in favor of that. If you're in a congested congregation in some place, then it still makes sense, especially if there is somebody coughing around, especially if there is somebody sneezing around, and you are yourself having any of those symptoms. You should not be going into these areas in congregation of any sort. But at the same time, using a mask in general, I think that is neither practiced anymore in the US, in UK, in Europe, and in India also nobody's practicing it. So I think we have gone past that. We have crossed that bridge. So we don't really have to look back, and hopefully we do not run into a subvariant which would certainly cause a breakthrough severe infection. So as long as we don't get a breakthrough subvariant which could cause a much increased severity of the disease than we are currently seeing, we really do not need to go back to all those precautions that we used to take.
Thank you, Dr. Kanwar, for this very illuminating discussion. Viewers, I do hope now you've got the latest on what's happening in COVID-19. So do contact us, do be there on all social media channels, do follow us, do put in your queries, and you know that we're always available 24/7 at all our hospitals and clinics to assist you. So remember that the COVID-19 is, Dr. said, it's not, we don't have that kind of severe disease causing mutations at the moment. There may be any amount of these viral mutations that happen, and this is going to keep happening. But if you really think about it, I think just some basic sanitation measures, and most of you are already vaccinated, so don't worry, take care and be safe. Thank you. Namaste.